Most men today are obsessed with self-improvement, and on the surface, that sounds healthy. Work harder, earn more, get fitter, sharpen your skills. But when you look closer, you realize something uncomfortable for many men. Endless self-improvement isn't growth, it's avoidance. It's a way to stay busy so they don't have to confront what they truly don't understand: how attraction actually works and how female nature responds emotionally, not logically. A man wakes up early, hits the gym, grinds his business, reads books, watches podcasts, optimizes every part of his routine. Yet when it comes to women, the results don't match the effort. He's respected, maybe even admired, but desire doesn't stick. Conversations fade, interest drops, and instead of questioning emotional understanding, he doubles down on improvement. He tells himself, I just need more money, or I need to get leaner, or I need higher status. This loop can last years. The problem isn't improvement itself. The problem is using improvement as a substitute for understanding. When a man believes attraction is earned through credentials, he avoids learning emotional dynamics. He avoids noticing how women respond to presence, pacing, polarity, and emotional leadership. Improvement becomes a shield. It feels productive, controlled, and safe. Emotional awareness feels uncertain, uncomfortable, and harder to measure, so it gets ignored. This is where many men get trapped. They think if they stack enough value, attraction will automatically follow. But attraction doesn't work like a resume. Women don't fall for potential on paper. They respond to how they feel around a man in real time. A man can be impressive and still emotionally flat. He can be disciplined and still boring. He can be successful and still predictable. Without understanding emotional tension and polarity, all that work just creates a well-packaged neutral. Another hidden issue is that over-improvement often masks fear: fear of rejection, fear of not being enough as you are, fear of slowing down and realizing you don't know how to lead emotionally. So instead of learning how to stay grounded during silence, how to allow mystery, how to hold space without over explaining, men stay busy, hustle becomes identity, productivity becomes self-worth, and women feel that pressure underneath it all. Women are extremely sensitive to emotional subtext. They don't need a man to be perfect, they need him to be centered. When improvement comes from insecurity, it leaks. It shows up as trying too hard, proving, overgiving, or seeking validation. The man might look strong externally, but emotionally, he's still asking, am I enough now? That question kills attraction faster than lack of effort ever could. Understanding female nature simplifies everything. It teaches a man that attraction grows in space, not pressure, that emotions need movement, not control. That leadership isn't about doing more, but about being stable while things are uncertain. Once a man understands this, improvement becomes optional rather than compulsive. He still grows, but he's no longer using growth to chase approval. This is why the most grounded men often look relaxed. They aren't constantly upgrading themselves to be chosen. They already understand how connection forms. They're not hiding behind effort. They're comfortable with awareness. And that comfort creates a calm confidence that no amount of grinding can replace. When you stop using self-improvement to avoid emotional understanding, everything changes naturally. Most men approach attraction as if it's a logical transaction. Do the right thing, say the right words, check the right boxes, and results should follow. This mindset works in school, careers, and business, so men naturally apply it to dating. But this is where the disconnect begins. Attraction doesn't respond to logic, it responds to emotion. And when men don't understand that, they keep trying to earn something that can't be earned through effort alone. A woman doesn't wake up one day and decide she's attracted because a man qualifies on paper. She feels pulled because of how she experiences herself around him. Does she feel relaxed or tense, curious or bored, seen or managed, safe but also stimulated? These emotional responses happen beneath conscious thought. They're not negotiated or convinced into existence. They're triggered by polarity, presence, and emotional leadership over time. This is why men who focus on credentials often feel confused. They did everything right. They were consistent, they showed interest, they communicated clearly, they were reliable and respectful. And yet the spark fades or never fully ignites. What they miss is that attraction is not a reward for good behavior. It's a reaction to emotional energy. When there's no emotional tension, no contrast, no sense of movement, desire stalls. Polarity is a major factor here. Attraction grows when there is a dynamic balance between grounded masculinity and expressive femininity. This doesn't mean roles or stereotypes. It means emotional contrast. A man who is calm, centered, and decisive allows a woman to feel free to be expressive, playful, and emotionally fluid. When a man is overly logical, overly explanatory, or overly cautious, that polarity collapses, everything becomes flat, safe, and neutral. Another mistake men make is trying to convince rather than invite. Logical attraction sounds like selling, explaining why you're a good choice, listing reasons, justifying intentions. Emotional attraction feels like curiosity unfolding naturally. It doesn't need to be explained, it's felt. When a man understands this, he stops over talking and starts allowing space. He lets moments breathe. He isn't afraid of silence. He isn't rushing toward outcomes. Women also bond through emotional progression. They need to feel that things are evolving, not stagnant. This doesn't require drama or chaos. It requires emotional pacing, lightness, depth, distance, closeness, presence, absence. Men who think logically often try to lock everything down too quickly. They want clarity and certainty early. Emotionally, that feels constricting. Attraction thrives when there's room for anticipation. When a man understands that emotions lead and logic follows, his behavior naturally shifts. He becomes less reactive. He doesn't panic when energy fluctuates. He doesn't try to fix moods. He doesn't personalize temporary distance. That emotional steadiness is deeply attractive because it signals self trust. A woman feels that she can move emotionally without destabilizing him. This understanding also removes resentment. Men who believe attraction should be earned often feel frustrated when it isn't reciprocated. They feel overlooked. But once you realize attraction isn't a moral system, the frustration dissolves. It's not about fairness, it's about alignment. Emotional alignment can't be forced, it can only be facilitated. When you stop trying to earn attraction and start understanding how it's emotionally triggered, you stop casing and start leading naturally. One of the most misunderstood traps men fall into is believing that relentless self improvement automatically signals confidence. On the surface, discipline, hustle, and optimization look masculine. But when you strip away the surface, you often find something else driving it: insecurity. Over improving isn't always about growth. Many times it's about trying to compensate for a lack of inner certainty, and women are incredibly attuned to that difference. A man who is grounded improves because he wants to express his potential. A man who is insecure improves because he thinks he must earn worthiness. The behaviors can look identical, but the emotional signal underneath is completely different. When improvement is driven by fear of being rejected, replaced, or overlooked, it leaks into how a man shows up with women. He might be disciplined, but he's tense. He might be accomplished, but he's still seeking reassurance. This is where hidden neediness appears. It doesn't always show up as begging for attention or validation. More often, it's subtle. It shows up as over explaining intentions, over investing too early, constantly probing value, or trying to be perfect. The man isn't relaxed, he's performing. And performance kills attraction because it removes authenticity and emotional safety at the same time. Women don't respond to effort the way men do. They respond to emotional stability. When a man is constantly upgrading himself to feel secure, his energy becomes outcome dependent. He's not present in the moment, he's monitoring reactions. Did that land well? Did she like that? Am I doing enough? This internal noise creates pressure, and pressure is the opposite of attraction. Another issue with over improvement is that it creates a false belief. Once I become enough, then I can relax. The problem is that enough never arrives. There's always another goal, another metric, another comparison. So the man stays locked in striving mode. Women feel this as restlessness. It's hard to connect deeply with someone who has never settled within himself. True confidence is quiet. It doesn't rush. It doesn't need constant feedback. A confident man can sit in silence without anxiety. He can allow space without fearing loss. He doesn't need to impress because he's already at ease with who he is. This ease is what creates attraction, not the array sume. When improvement is rooted in insecurity, it also warps expectations. The man starts believing he deserves attraction because of his effort. When it doesn't happen, resentment builds. He feels unseen or undervalued. But attraction doesn't respond to sacrifice, it responds to emotional alignment. Once a man understands this, he stops measuring his worth by outcomes with women. The irony is that when a man stops trying to be impressive, he becomes more attractive. When he no longer needs validation, his presence strengthens. When he's not chasing approval, his energy feels clean and unpressured. This doesn't mean he stops improving. It means improvement is no longer a strategy to be chosen. Women are drawn to men who feel whole, not men who are constantly trying to fix themselves. Wholeness communicates safety, direction, and emotional maturity. It says, I'm here because I choose to be, not because I need something from you. That distinction changes everything. When self improvement comes from strength rather than lack, it supports attraction instead of sabotaging it. One of the biggest blind spots men have when it comes to attraction is confusing respect with desire. They believe that if a woman respects them, attraction should automatically follow. This assumption makes sense from a logical masculine perspective. In most areas of life, respect is the foundation for cooperation, trust, and long term success. But in attraction, respect and desire are not the same thing, and mistaking one for the other is why so many men feel stuck. A woman can deeply respect a man and still feel no romantic pull toward him. She might admire his work ethic, his reliability, his intelligence, even his moral character. She may speak highly of him, feel safe with him, and trust him completely. And yet there is no spark, no longing, no emotional charge. Men often interpret this as confusion or mixed signals, when in reality, the dynamic is very clear on an emotional level. Respect is static, desire is dynamic. Respect is earned through consistency, responsibility, and integrity. Desire is awakened through emotional polarity, tension, and presence. When a man focuses only on being respectable, he often becomes predictable. Predictability feels safe, but it rarely feels exciting. Without emotional movement, attraction has nothing to feed on. This is why many men end up in the good guy or friend category without understanding how they got there. They did everything right. They were patient, supportive, available, and kind. What they didn't realize is that they were managing the interaction instead of leading it emotionally. They removed uncertainty, mystery, and emotional contrast in an attempt to be correct. In doing so, they unknowingly neutralize desire. Women don't experience attraction as a checklist being completed. They experience it as a feeling that builds and fades based on emotional flow. A man who understands female nature knows that desire needs space to breathe. It needs moments of anticipation. It needs subtle unpredictability. Not chaos, not games, but emotional depth that isn't immediately resolved. Another mistake men make is assuming that being agreeable increases attraction. They avoid disagreement, suppress opinions, and try to align with everything a woman says. This earns approval, but approval is not desire. In fact, excessive agreement often signals a lack of self trust. A man who stands grounded in his perspective without needing to dominate or please creates emotional polarity. That polarity is where attraction lives. Respect without desire often leads to frustration because the man feels overlooked. He feels like his effort isn't being rewarded. But attraction is not a reward system, it's a response, and responses can't be negotiated or earned through sacrifice. Once a man understands this, he stops taking it personally and starts adjusting how he shows up emotionally. Desire grows when a woman feels something when she's around a man: curiosity, warmth, tension, playfulness, calm mixed with excitement. These feelings don't come from trying to be impressive, they come from being present, emotionally steady, willing to let things unfold without controlling the outcome. When a man stops chasing respect as a strategy for attraction, he becomes more relaxed. He speaks more honestly. He allows pauses. He isn't afraid of losing approval. Ironically, this self trust often increases respect anyway, but now it's paired with desire because it's rooted in authenticity, not performance. Understanding the difference between respect and desire frees a man from trying to be everything and allows him to simply be grounded, which is where attraction naturally begins. When a man doesn't understand emotional dynamics, he defaults to performance. He thinks attraction is something he must actively create through effort, words, and constant engagement. So he talks more, explains more, reassures more, and gives more. On the surface, looks like confidence and initiative. Underneath, it's often uncertainty disguised as action. This is what happens when emotional literacy is missing. A man replaces leadership with performance. Emotional literacy means understanding how emotions move, fluctuate, and settle without needing to control them. It's the ability to recognize when to lean in and when to step back, when to speak, and when silence carries more weight. Without this awareness, a man feels compelled to fill every gap. Silence feels awkward. Distance feels threatening. Uncertainty feels dangerous. So he performs to stabilize his own discomfort. This is where many men lose their masculine edge. Leadership isn't about constant input, it's about containment. A grounded man can hold emotional space without needing to manipulate it. He doesn't rush to fix moods or clarify everything immediately. He allows emotions to rise and fall naturally. That calm containment signals strength because it shows he trusts himself in the process. When a man lacks this understanding, he becomes overly responsive. He mirrors emotions instead of grounding them. If she pulls back slightly, he chases. If she seems uncertain, he over-explains. Energy drops, he increases effort. This reactive behavior shifts the dynamic. Instead of leading emotionally, he's now following her emotional state, which dissolves polarity. Women don't want to be managed and they don't want to manage. They want to feel that a man can stay steady even when emotions are moving. When a man is constantly performing, it puts pressure on the interaction. It feels like something is being pushed toward an outcome. Attraction needs space, not force. Another aspect of performance is over communication. Men who don't understand emotional pacing often say too much too soon. They reveal intentions early, define the relationship prematurely, and seek clarity before emotional connection has had time to grow. This is logical behavior, but emotionally it feels constricting. Desire needs room to unfold, not to be locked down. Leadership, on the other hand, is subtle. It's shown through decisiveness without urgency, confidence without explanation, and presence without neediness. A man who understands emotional dynamics doesn't feel the need to prove direction, he embodies it. He knows when to invite and when to wait. He's comfortable letting moments be unresolved. When a man stops performing, he becomes more authentic. He speaks because he wants to, not because he's afraid of losing momentum. He gives attention without attachment. He leads interactions by setting emotional tone, not by controlling outcomes. This creates safety and intrigue at the same time. Emotional literacy also helps a man recognize tests and mood shifts without reacting defensively. Instead of taking things personally, he stays centered. He doesn't argue with emotions, he allows them. That grounded response is deeply attractive because it shows emotional maturity. The paradox is that when a man stops trying so hard, things flow better. When he stops performing, he starts leading. When he stops chasing certainty, he creates attraction. Leadership isn't loud, it's felt. And it only emerges when a man understands emotions well enough to trust silence, space, and timing. When performance drops away, presence takes over naturally. Real confidence doesn't come from stacking more achievements or constantly refining yourself into some ideal version you think women want. It comes from understanding. When a man truly understands female nature and emotional dynamics, Something subtle but powerful happens. He relaxes. And that relaxation is what most men are missing, no matter how impressive their lives look from the outside. Men who don't understand attraction feel like they're always behind. There's always another book to read, another habit to build, another level to reach before they feel ready. They believe confidence is something that arrives later, after enough work has been done. So they live in a constant state of preparation. Women feel this immediately. It shows up as tension, urgency, and a quiet need to be validated. Understanding removes that pressure. When a man understands how emotions work, how attraction grows, and how polarity is created, he no longer feels like he has to earn interest. He knows what matters and, just as importantly, what doesn't. This clarity creates inner stillness. He's no longer scrambling to optimize himself in every interaction. He's present. Endless optimization often signals that a man doesn't trust himself yet. He's trying to become safe before he shows up fully. But attraction responds to grounded certainty, not perfection. A man who understands this stops polishing himself for approval. He's already comfortable in his skin, flaws included. That comfort is rare and it's magnetic. When understanding replaces optimization, effort becomes cleaner. The man still grows, still trains, still builds his life, but none of it is desperate. None of it is tied to outcomes with women. His identity is no longer dependent on how he's perceived. Women feel this as emotional freedom. There's no pressure to perform for him, no sense that they're responsible for his confidence. Another shift that happens is emotional pacing. A man who understands female nature doesn't rush intimacy or clarity. He knows emotions unfold in stages. He allows curiosity, distance, connection, and anticipation to exist without interfering. He doesn't need constant reassurance because he understands that fluctuations are normal. That patience communicates strength far more than constant self-improvement ever could. True confidence also shows up in boundaries. When a man understands what he brings emotionally, he doesn't overgive, he doesn't chase interest, he doesn't try to convince, he chooses, and choosing rather than seeking to be chosen is a fundamental masculine shift. Women respond to that decisive because it feels stable and grounded. Understanding also dissolves resentment. Men who optimize endlessly often feel overlooked. They secretly believe their effort should guarantee attraction. When it doesn't, frustration builds. But when a man understands that attraction isn't owed or earned, that resentment disappears. He stops taking rejection personally. He stays calm, centered, and self-directed. This is why men who understand female nature often appear effortlessly confident. They're not trying to be impressive. They're not constantly adjusting themselves. They're simply aligned. Their confidence isn't loud or performative. It's quiet, consistent, and rooted in awareness. The final irony is that when a man stops obsessing over becoming better, he often becomes more attractive, not because he lowered standards, but because he raised his understanding. He no longer needs to optimize himself into worthiness. He already knows who he is and how connection works. When understanding replaces endless optimization, confidence becomes natural rather than forced.